3 days ago, something shifted. You might not have noticed it, you probably dismissed it. But somewhere in those 72 hours, the universe sent you a signal, a warning, a notification that your life is about to split, not gradually diverge, not slowly separate over time, split, like a road that suddenly becomes two roads going in completely different directions. And in 3 days from that warning, you'll be on one path or the other, and the two paths don't merge back. They don't lead to similar destinations. One path takes you to a version of life that's an evolution of what you've been living. The other takes you somewhere entirely different, unrecognizable from where you are now. And the universe, in its strange mercy, gives you 3 days' notice. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to recognize what's happening. 3 days to choose which path you're going to take when the split occurs. Most people miss it entirely. They experience the warning and they don't recognize it as a warning. They think it's stress, or coincidence, or their imagination, and they go about their normal life. And 3 days later, the split happens, and they take the default path. The path of least resistance. The path that requires no awareness, no choice, no conscious participation, and that path is usually just more of what they've already been experiencing. The same patterns, the same limitations, the same version of themselves they've been for years, and they wonder why nothing ever really changes, why breakthrough never comes, why transformation feels impossible. It's because they keep missing the warning, and missing the warning means missing the split, and missing the split means staying on the default path forever. But you're not going to miss it, because I'm going to tell you exactly what the warning looks like. What happens in those 3 days before your life splits? The specific signs that appear, the internal shifts you experience, the external disruptions that show up. And once you know what to look for, once you can identify the warning when it arrives, you can prepare. You can make the split conscious instead of unconscious. You can choose the evolutionary path instead of defaulting to the repetitive one. You can participate in the moment that determines the next chapter of your life instead of sleepwalking through it and waking up on the wrong side of the split wondering what happened. And here's what you need to understand before we go into the specifics. Life splits are real. They're not metaphor. They're not spiritual bypassing or wishful thinking or manifestation language. They're actual moments where your trajectory changes so dramatically that the before and after are unrecognizable to each other. You've experienced them. Everyone has. Look back at your life and find the moments where everything changed, where the person you were before that moment and the person you became after are almost like different people. That was a split. And before that split, there was a warning. You just didn't know you were being warned. These splits don't happen randomly. They happen when you've reached a threshold, when the version of you that you've been can't take you where you need to go next, when growth requires not just change but transformation. Not just improvement, but becoming. And the universe, or quantum field, or whatever intelligence is running this show, it doesn't just throw you into transformation without warning. It signals. It alerts. It gives you 3 days to get ready, 3 days to see what's coming, 3 days to shift from unconscious to conscious. And if you catch the warning, if you recognize it and understand what it means, those 3 days become the most important 72 hours of your life. Because what you do in those 3 days determines which version of your future you step into. The warning is not loud. It's not obvious. It doesn't announce itself. It comes as subtle disruptions, internal sensations, external coincidences, things that are easy to dismiss if you're not paying attention. But once you know the pattern, once you've seen it before and recognized it, you can't unsee it. Every time it appears again, you'll know. You'll feel it in your body before your mind catches up. And you'll have a choice. Prepare or ignore. Participate or default. Evolve or repeat. And that choice, made consciously in those 3 days, changes everything. Not eventually, immediately. The moment the split occurs, and the split is coming. For you. Maybe it already happened and you missed it. Maybe it's happening right now and you're in the 3-day window. Maybe it's coming soon and this is your preparation. But it's coming. Because life doesn't let you stay static. Growth is not optional. Evolution is built into the system. And when you've outgrown the container you're in, when the life you're living can no longer hold the person you're becoming, the universe doesn't wait. It splits the path, and it warns you first, and the warning is always the same. And you're about to learn exactly what it is. And once you know, you'll never miss it again. And missing it again means missing your evolution. And you're not here to miss that. You're here to catch it, to see it coming, to prepare, and to walk through the split fully awake, fully aware, fully choosing the path that leads to becoming instead of the path that leads to repeating. And the difference between those paths is everything. The first thing that happens exactly 72 hours before your life splits is a feeling you can't name. It's not anxiety. It's not excitement. It's not dread or anticipation. It's something underneath all of those. A stirring, a restlessness, a sense that something is ending and something else is beginning, but you can't see what either thing is. You might wake up with it. This feeling in your chest or your stomach that today is different. Not different because of what's happening externally. Different because something internal shifted overnight, and you can't explain it. And if someone asks you what's wrong, you say nothing. Because nothing is wrong. But something is happening. And you feel it even though you can't see it. This is the universe's first signal, the opening of the 3-day warning window. And most people dismiss it immediately. They call it a weird mood. They blame it on sleep or stress or hormones or the weather. They try to shake it off, get back to normal, ignore the sensation, and by ignoring it, they miss the alert. They don't realize they just entered the most important 72 hours they've had in months, maybe years. The window where their life is preparing to split. And preparation without awareness is just confusion. And confusion leads to the default path. The path where nothing changes. Where the split happens but you end up on the same side you've always been on. But if you recognize the feeling for what it is, if you acknowledge that this unnamed restlessness is not random, is not meaningless, is not something to push through and get over, then you're awake. You're in the window consciously. And conscious participation in the 3 days changes which path you take when the split occurs. Because the split is not about circumstances. It's about frequency. And frequency is determined by awareness. And awareness begins with recognizing the warning. After the initial feeling, the second sign appears. And this one is external. Something disrupts your normal pattern. Not catastrophically. Subtly. A plan cancels. A person doesn't show up. A routine breaks. Technology fails. Traffic reroutes you. Something small happens that interrupts the flow of your normal life. And again, most people treat this as inconvenience, frustration, bad luck. They try to get back on track, resume normal, fix the disruption and move on. But the disruption is not random. It's intentional. The universe breaking your pattern so you can see the pattern, showing you that the normal you've been living is about to become unavailable. And if you're clinging to normal, if you're trying to force everything back into the familiar structure, you're resisting the split. And resistance doesn't stop the split. It just ensures you take the default path through it. The third sign, usually appearing on day 2 of the 3-day window, is a memory. Something from your past surfaces, not gradually. Suddenly, a person you haven't thought about in years drops into your mind. A situation you thought you'd processed and moved on from comes back with emotional charge. A version of yourself you used to be appears in your awareness like a ghost. And this is not random nostalgia. This is the universe showing you what needs to be released before the split. Because you can't take everything through. The evolutionary path requires letting go of old identity, old stories, old attachments. And the memory that surfaces is the thing that's been holding you in the repetitive path. The thing that needs to be acknowledged and released so you can take the evolutionary one. On day 3, the final day before the split, the signs intensify. The restlessness becomes almost unbearable. The disruptions multiply, the memories flood, and something new appears. A choice. Not a big, obvious, life-changing choice. A small choice. Something that seems insignificant. Do I go to this place or that place? Do I say yes to this or no to that? Do I reach out to this person or stay silent? And the choice feels weighted, like it matters more than it should, like there's something underneath it you can't see. And there is. That small choice is the fork. That's the moment where the path splits. And which option you choose determines which path you take. Not because the choice itself is so important, because the choice reveals which frequency you're operating from. Fear or trust, comfort or growth, old pattern or new possibility. And frequency determines path, and path determines future. And here's the critical thing. You can't think your way through this choice. You can't logic it. You can't pros and cons list it. Because the split is not happening at the mental level. It's happening at the quantum level. At the level of who you're becoming versus who you've been. And the right choice, the evolutionary choice, almost always feels wrong. It feels risky, uncomfortable, like you're choosing against yourself. Because you are. You're choosing against the version of yourself that's been running your life up until now. The version that's familiar, safe, known. And that version will fight to stay in control. Will make the evolutionary choice feel dangerous. And if you listen to that fear, if you let that version choose, you take the default path. And the split happens. And nothing changes. And 3 months later, 6 months later, you're wondering why you're still stuck. It's because you missed the 3-day window, and the window doesn't stay open. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Most people take the default path, not once. Every time. Every time their life tries to split. Every time the universe sends the 3-day warning. Every time the opportunity for evolution appears, they default. They choose comfort over growth. Familiar over unknown. The version of themselves they've always been over the version they could become. And they do this unconsciously. They're not aware they're choosing. They think they're just living their life, going with the flow, being practical. But practical is code for safe, and safe is code for stuck. And stuck is what the default path delivers forever. The default path is not a bad path, it's not punishment, it's not failure, it's just more of what you've already been experiencing. Same patterns, same results, same version of you living same version of life. And for some people that's fine. They're content with repetition. They don't need evolution. They're not here for transformation. But you're not one of those people. If you were, you wouldn't be watching this. You wouldn't be drawn to content about quantum reality and consciousness and life splits. You're here because you feel it. The pull toward the evolutionary path. The knowing that you're meant for something different than what you've been living. And yet every time the split comes, every time the 3-day warning appears, you might still be taking the default path. And you need to understand why. Because understanding why is what breaks the pattern. The default path is chosen through inaction, through not recognizing the warning, through dismissing the signs, through treating the 3 days like normal days instead of preparation days. And inaction feels like nothing. It doesn't feel like you're making a choice. But not choosing is choosing. Not participating is participating. Not preparing is preparing to default. And the default path is what happens when you're asleep during the split, when you're unconscious, when you're letting habit and pattern and comfort run the show instead of awareness. And here's why it keeps happening. The evolutionary path requires death, not physical death, identity death. The death of the version of you that's been navigating life up until now. And death, even identity death, triggers every survival mechanism you have. Your nervous system reads change as threat, reads unknown as danger, reads letting go of the familiar as potential annihilation. And it fights. It resists. It creates fear and doubt and second-guessing and rational-sounding reasons why you should stay where you are. Why the small choice on day 3 should be the safe choice. Why disruption should be avoided. Why the restlessness should be ignored. And if you listen to those mechanisms, if you let survival override evolution, you take the default path. Every time. The other reason people default is they don't believe the split is real. They think it's metaphor, spiritual language, manifestation talk. They don't actually believe that their life is about to diverge into 2 completely different trajectories and they're in a 3-day window where their choices matter more than usual. So they don't treat the 3 days differently. They don't pay attention to the signs. They don't prepare. They just keep living normally. And normal is the frequency of the default path. And default is where they end up. But the split is real. And the warning is real. And the 3 days are real. Not metaphorically. Actually, you can map them. You can look back at the major transformation moments in your life and find the 3 days before. The restlessness, the disruptions, the memories, the choice. It's always there. You just weren't aware you were in a window. And awareness is everything. Because awareness allows participation. And participation allows conscious choice. And conscious choice is what takes you to the evolutionary path instead of the default. And here's what makes this urgent. The splits don't happen often. Maybe once a year, maybe less. And if you miss one, you have to wait for the next. And waiting means more time on the default path. More time in the repetitive cycle. More time wondering why breakthrough never comes. And breakthrough doesn't come because breakthrough is the evolutionary path. And the evolutionary path is only accessible during the split. And the split is only accessible if you catch the 3-day warning. Miss the warning, miss the split. Miss the split, miss evolution. Miss evolution, stay stuck. And stuck is not where you're meant to be. You know this. You feel this. And now you know why you've been stuck. Because you've been missing the windows. And now that you know what the windows look like, you won't miss them anymore. So you've recognized the warning. You feel the restlessness. You notice the disruptions. The memory surfaced. And you know, with increasing certainty, that you're in the 3-day window. Your life is about to split. And you have 72 hours, maybe less if you caught the signs late, to prepare. To shift from unconscious to conscious. To position yourself for the evolutionary path instead of defaulting to the repetitive one. So what do you actually do? How do you navigate these 3 days? How do you prepare for a split you can't see coming? How do you choose the evolutionary path when you don't know what it looks like yet? First, you stop trying to maintain normal. This is critical. The moment you recognize you're in the window, you release the need for everything to be okay, stable, predictable, controlled. Because the split is disruption. The evolutionary path is unknown. And trying to force stability during these 3 days is trying to stay on the default path. It's resistance disguised as responsibility. And resistance doesn't prevent the split. It just ensures you go through it unconsciously. So you let things be unstable. You allow the disruptions. You don't fight the restlessness. You create space for whatever is trying to emerge instead of forcing everything to stay the same. Second, you get alone. You need time without external noise, without other people's energy, opinions, expectations. Because the split is happening at a frequency level most people can't perceive. And if you're constantly surrounded by people who are locked into the version of you you've been, their energy will pull you back into that version. Will make the default path feel safer. Will reinforce the identity that needs to die. So you carve out alone time, even if it's just an hour, even if you have to cancel plans or disappoint people or be unavailable. The 3 days matter more than anyone's temporary inconvenience. And you can't hear the signal if you're drowning in everyone else's frequency. Third, you ask the question. Not out loud, internally. You sit with it. What needs to die for me to evolve? And you listen. You don't think. You don't analyze. You listen. And something will surface. An identity, a story, a belief, a way you've been operating that worked before but doesn't work anymore. And you acknowledge it. You don't fight it. You don't defend it. You just see it. This is what's been running my life. And this is what needs to end. And seeing it is half the work, because you can't let go of what you can't see. And the 3-day window is when it becomes visible, when the universe shows you exactly what's keeping you on the default path. And showing you is the mercy, the gift, the warning you needed. Fourth, and this is the hardest part, you prepare to choose against yourself. Because on day 3, when the small choice appears, the choice that determines which path you take, the evolutionary option will feel wrong. It will feel like you're betraying yourself. like you're making a mistake, like you're choosing chaos over stability. And every part of you that's been running your life will scream that you're about to ruin everything. And that's how you know it's the right choice. The evolutionary path always feels like self-betrayal to the version of you that's dying, because it is. You're choosing the future version over the current version, and the current version doesn't want to die, so it fights. And if you wait until you feel ready, until you feel certain, until the choice feels safe, you'll choose default. Every time. So you prepare in these 3 days to choose the thing that scares you, the option that feels too risky, the path you can't see the end of, because that's evolution. And evolution is not safe. It's just necessary. If you're in the 3-day window right now, or if you felt the restlessness and recognized the warning, right, I see the split coming in the comments, not as manifestation, as acknowledgement. You're awake. You caught the signal, and you're not going to sleepwalk through the most important 72 hours of your transformation. You're going to prepare. You're going to participate. You're going to choose consciously. And when the split happens, when the path divides, you're taking the evolutionary one. Not because it's easy, because it's yours. And you've been preparing for this moment longer than you realize. And the 3 days are the universe giving you time to get ready. And you're not wasting that time. You're using it. And using it means everything. The choice is coming. Day 3. The small decision that carries the weight of the universe. And you'll feel it. The pull in 2 directions. Comfort or growth. Known or unknown. Default or evolutionary. And in that moment, you'll remember this. You'll remember that the choice that feels dangerous is the one that leads to transformation, and the choice that feels safe is the one that leads to repetition. And you'll choose, not with your mind, with your body, with your knowing, with the part of you that's been waiting for this split your entire life, and you'll take the evolutionary path. And 3 days later, you'll look back and barely recognize the person who was standing at that fork, because that person died, and you became someone new. And new is what the split delivers. But only if you're awake for it. The split doesn't happen gradually. It happens in a moment. 1 second, you're in the 3-day window. The next, the path has divided, and you're on one side or the other, and the moment itself is quiet. There's no dramatic shift, no visible change in your external reality, no flash of light or feeling of transcendence. What happens is this. The choice gets made. The small decision on day 3, the fork you've been feeling, and you choose. And the moment you choose, the split completes, and you're on a path. And the other path, the one you didn't take, it's still real, still happening, but you're not on it anymore. Another version of you is living a different life, making different choices, experiencing different outcomes, but you're here, on this path. And for better or worse, this is your trajectory now. And here's how you know which path you took. Within 3 days after the split, something will appear in your life that wasn't there before. If you took the evolutionary path, the thing that appears will be new, unexpected, something you didn't plan for or predict, an opportunity, a person, a conversation, an insight, something that wouldn't have been possible on the default path. And it won't feel comfortable. It will feel like confirmation that you chose correctly and terrifying that you chose at all. Because the evolutionary path is not comfortable. It's just real. And real means you're growing. And growth is uncomfortable. But the discomfort has a quality. It's alive. It's moving. It's taking you somewhere you haven't been. If you took the default path, the thing that appears will be familiar. A repeat of a pattern you've experienced before. The same type of situation. The same kind of person. The same lesson you thought you already learned. And it will feel safe at first. Like you made the right choice by staying with what you know. But underneath the safety, there will be a feeling. A knowing. That you missed something. That there was another option and you didn't take it. And that knowing will sit in your chest. Quiet. Persistent. A low-grade grief for the path you didn't choose. And that grief is how you know you defaulted. Not because defaulting is wrong, but because defaulting means staying the same. And some part of you knows you didn't come here to stay the same. The other way you know which path you took is by what falls away. On the evolutionary path, something or someone that was central to your life before the split will start to fade. Not because you're pushing them away, because the frequency changed, and they don't match the new frequency. And mismatches don't hold. So relationships shift, jobs end, living situations change. Not all at once, but the process begins within days of the split, and it feels like loss, like something is being taken from you. But it's not loss, it's shedding. You're shedding the old container so the new one can form, and shedding is necessary. Painful, but necessary. And the pain is proof you chose evolution, because evolution requires releasing what no longer fits. On the default path, nothing falls away. Everything stays the same. Same people, same job, same routine, same life. And that stability will feel like relief, like you avoided disaster, like you made the smart choice. But the relief will be temporary, because within weeks, sometimes days, the restlessness returns. The same restlessness that signaled the 3-day window. And you'll realize the split didn't resolve anything. It just gave you another chance and you didn't take it. And now you're back where you were, waiting for the next split, hoping next time you'll be ready. And you might be, or you might default again. Because defaulting is a pattern, and patterns repeat until they're broken. But here's the important thing. Missing one split doesn't mean you're stuck forever. The universe is patient. The splits keep coming. Maybe not as often as you'd like. But they come. And every time they come, you get another chance. Another 3-day warning. Another opportunity to choose evolution over repetition. And if you missed the last one, if you're reading this and recognizing that you defaulted, that's not failure. That's awareness. And awareness is what you need for the next one. Because now you know what the warning looks like. Now you know what the 3 days mean. Now you know that the small choice on day 3 is actually the biggest choice you'll make. And next time, you'll be ready. You'll see it coming. You'll prepare, and you'll choose differently. And the beautiful thing about the evolutionary path, once you take it, is that it builds momentum. The first split you navigate consciously is the hardest, because you're doing it blind. You're trusting something you can't see. But once you've done it once you've felt the split and chosen evolution and watched your life reorganize around that choice, you have proof. You know it's real, and the next time the 3-day warning appears, you won't doubt. You won't question. You'll recognize it immediately. And you'll navigate it with more grace, more ease, more trust, until choosing the evolutionary path becomes natural. Until you're not defaulting anymore. Until every split is an opportunity you take instead of a window you miss. Look back at your life. At the moments when everything changed. When you met the person who altered your trajectory. When you made the decision that led to where you are now. When you took the risk that didn't make sense but changed everything. When you left the thing you thought you needed and found something better on the other side. Go back to those moments. Not the moment itself, the 3 days before, and you'll see it. The restlessness you couldn't name. The disruption that broke your pattern. The memory that surfaced from nowhere. The small choice that felt weighted. It was all there. The 3-day warning. You just didn't know you were being warned. And when you see it, when you recognize the pattern, when you map every major transformation in your life back to a 3-day window you didn't know existed, everything shifts. Because you realize you haven't been stumbling through life randomly. You haven't been lucky or unlucky. You've been receiving signals, warnings, invitations. And sometimes you caught them. Sometimes you responded. Sometimes you chose the evolutionary path without knowing that's what you were doing. And those were the moments that changed everything. The moments you look back on and think, that's when my life split. And you're right, it did split. And you took the path that led here. And here might not be perfect. But it's different than where you would have been if you'd defaulted. And now that you know, now that you can see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Every time the restlessness appears, you'll know. Every time your routine disrupts, you'll pause. Every time a memory surfaces unexpectedly, you'll pay attention. Every time a small choice feels too heavy for its size, you'll recognize what's happening. You're in the window, the 3-day warning. Your life is preparing to split, and you have time. Not much, but enough. Enough to prepare, enough to choose consciously, enough to take the evolutionary path instead of defaulting to the repetitive one. And the splits will keep coming. This is not a one-time thing. Life doesn't split once and then stay linear forever. Life is a series of splits, moments where the path divides and you choose. And each choice determines the next segment of your journey. And some segments are longer than others. Some paths take years to complete before the next split. Some take months. But they all lead to another fork, another 3-day warning, another opportunity to evolve or repeat. And you get to choose. Every time. And every time you choose evolution, you become more of who you're actually here to be. And every time you default, you stay more of who you've already been. And there's no judgment in that. No right or wrong. Just consequence. Evolution or repetition. Growth or stagnation. Becoming or staying. If you want the complete framework for recognizing and navigating life splits, everything is in Awaken Your Quantum Power. Link in the pinned comment. For people who are done defaulting, done missing the signals, done wondering why transformation never comes. Because transformation does come, it just comes during the splits. And the splits are preceded by warnings. And the warnings are what you now know how to see. But whether you go deeper or not, you now have the knowledge, the pattern, the map. You know that 3 days before your life changes, the universe warns you. You know what the warning looks like. You know what the 3 days require. You know that the small choice on day 3 determines everything. And you know that you've been navigating these splits your whole life.